Flaws are some of the most difficult things for people to roleplay. They either lean way too much into it, or they just forget to add flaws overall and get angry whenever NPCs don't view them as perfect. So, D&D players of the world, what are your biggest character's flaws, and how did it impact your game? Terrible at remembering names, always called every PC and NPC by a random or slightly off name, and dang was it hilarious. Us D&D players can never really get enough. Whether you play 3 times a week or once a month, part of you always craves more. We get our fix however we can, by watching short stories online, D&D live streams, Baldur's Gate. Well, allow me to offer you something new. The best available follows a party of new adventurers trying to make a name for themselves in hopes of being sponsored in a competition. Waterdeep's Festival of Heroes, which sees the chosen parties delving into the depths of Undermountain, risking life and limb to suppress the evils and monsters below to protect the city above. The dungeon of the Mad Mage is filled with danger, treasure, glory, and mysteries yet to be revealed. Come watch the journey from humble beginnings into heroic legend as we adapt a campaign years in the making into an illustrated web series with art from Doodle Poodle, author of Tales from the Tables. We pride ourselves in converting hours-long sessions into smoothly paced episode with limited animation, music, blood, sweat, and tears. Get in on the ground floor of something great and join the Forever DMs table today. Link in the description. So this was actually an unintentional flaw that I adopted too. My barbarian ended up never remembering names. Intelligence was a dump stat, as well as me having a hard time remembering names. I ended up calling characters by what they were. Me talking to our Tabaxi rogue, sneaky feline. Me talking to our Kenku wizard that would ride on my shoulders, bird brains. Oh, I had a character who was the exact inverse of this. He was tainted by fey magic, but that also caused him to inherit their collection quirk. Oh no, he was heavily compelled to write down every single name he had heard to a detriment. He hears something in combat, he's spending his next action writing down that name. He had to know them all. My 500-year-old cleric has spent her entire life in a temple, so she's extremely naive and trusting. Oh, poor thing is having some trouble with Strahd. Oh, God. My level 14 wizard had a robe of eyes that gave him 24/7 astral vision and 360-degree vision. If he hadn't been a warforged who dealt with planar travel in the past, I would have played it similarly to yours. Ah, my Furbolg abjurer, Munir, is a hopeless romantic at heart. While he enjoys flirting and, casual sex, he's ultimately looking for his Mr. Right that he can spend half a millennium with. But he is also terrified of the pain of loss and grieving, as we all are. So he sort of closed himself off to potential loves that aren't also Furbolgs, because men of other lineages are either going to live far shorter lives than he is, or much longer in the case of elves. My character will happily undertake any quest that's asked of him, but you do not tell him what he must do. He does things that you need him to do, but he does them on his terms and his alone. At the moment, I'm playing a tiefling genie warlock with the archaeologist background that cannot sleep if there's any amount of light, and unless stated otherwise, is covered in dirt. So far, it hasn't impacted me too much, but I'm expecting some difficulties when dealing with noble NPCs due to my dirtiness, and maybe struggling to sleep could lead to exhaustion levels. My new Warforged character has their bond and their flaw as the exact same thing. I will do anything for the person I was created to help. I think it's gonna be really interesting to play with that. She is very aloof and uncaring. She's nearly 1,000 years old, so has a bit of a blasé view on life and death. While other members of the party mourn or care for the poor or anyone in need, she is firmly, "Well, that doesn't really bother me, darling," and saunters away. which I would say is cool, but sometimes I find it hard to RP as I am technically the exact opposite in real life. Well, one of Aqua's biggest flaws is just being chaotic and stubborn. This tended to impact the game that I was in during high school quite a bit. Once our party got surrounded by the town guards and Aqua, well, he decided to misty step into a tree, failed a stealth check, and got noticed. Then he failed the athletics check and, well, that's how the guards caught him. In a subsequent session where half the party was in jail, he somehow managed to sneak his staff into the jail cell, only for it to be confiscated about a few seconds later. Let it be known that he tried to use a spell to even see if he could get out of jail. In the second to the last session where we were gathering allies, it was him who made a deal with a wyvern, which was how the party ended up with a wyvern as their ally during the final battle. My furbolg hasn't interacted with money very much in his life, so he has, well, no idea what market value is, even for the most basic of things. He is also a sucker for any of the most basic financial fraud schemes because he only sees transactions as helping the other person and them helping him. So when it comes to gold, if he has enough for what they're asking, he'll give what they're asking. Unless it's something he doesn't want, of course. This has led to my furbolg, when sent to procure lodging for the group's pet, paying probably 4 times too much. Also, he wears all obnoxiously branded merchandise because the shopkeeper showed basic kindness and asked if my character would do it. No discount, just, "Could you do this for me?" Yes, of course, it costs me nothing to help you in this way, except for the party's sanity. My Sarskai drow has the worst spending habits you can imagine. She's blown all her money on weather inappropriate clothing while living in the 10 towns. She's emotionally stunted after being hidden away in the Underdark for a long time, and she's convinced she always needs a little treat to make up for that upbringing. She is, suffice to say, no longer allowed to manage her own money. We also have an all-extra Planar campaign, and I'm playing a beached Rhaegar in that one. She's curious and intelligent, but has zero understanding of any of the customs and mores of her new home. And excels at making people uncomfortable with her questions. I don't know why I found that funny. Her deeper flaw is that her apathy or avoidance of problems until they metastasterize into something she can't ignore, but that'll come into play later. Yeah, avoiding something after having literally no social ineptitudes, like, great, you're just screwed all around. I'm playing a Kenku that was bullied for his whole life before being taken in by a Shadar Kai and trained as a shadow monk in the Shadowfell. The party found him caged by some hags and teleported out of the cage and performed so well in that combat that they started stroking his ego like crazy. This has made him very brazen, which isn't great when combined with his greed. Going from being treated like he's useless to being talked up as the group's badass has made him the ballsiest person in the whole group. The fact that shortly after joining, the party's frontline paladin was abducted, leaving him as the de facto tank, does not help this fact. While traveling through a swamp, he chased down a froghemoth that was trying to flee, despite being badly hurt and got swallowed by the thing. If he didn't land a stun from within the thing, he would have been unconscious by the next turn, and probably dead after that. He stole a helicopter to escape from an enemy faction's military without knowing how to fly the thing. He even challenged a Hydra for a giant crocodile carcass that he wanted to sell. My current character is overly trusting of groups and is untrusting of individuals. He's a Loxodon barbarian that comes from a tribe who have strong family and group relationships, so he values interconnections and is overly trusting of groups because that's how you live and die where he's from. Thinking he knows everything that matters after his only worldly experience is a teensy tiny little village and the monastery that he was raised and has lived in for his whole life. Apart from the couple of years he was a random fox before he was granted sentience. Basically, this means for the last month or so in-game, He's just been having to struggle to keep his own biases and preconceptions in place, or he's gonna have a mental breakdown. Oh, where do I begin? My cleric is a smartass. For now, it's okay because we're currently in her home country where she knows all the things, but she thinks she knows best yet knows little of the world because she has hardly left her home country more than a 3 days march down south. She thinks that she knows what to do because she was both raised as a cleric in a lawful god's temple and as a part of a very humble, noble family. That's just on the surface. Deep down, she's still trying to cope with a lot of things, starting with her always wanting to prove herself because she was born out of wedlock, unlike her brother, trying to make everybody happy and safe because it was her family that doomed her home, trying to be a lot more than she is, too big for her britches as it were. And while she portrays safety and trust and the stoic image of faith and fate, she has no idea where to go and what to hope for. She has taken a lot more onto her shoulders than they can carry. My sorcerer started as an idealistic, furgative Nepo baby. He was actually pretty poor, but everything he was ever good at came naturally to him, so that he doesn't understand struggling to learn skills. Who thought his travels would be fairly whimsical and he'd meet wonderful people and have goofy, fantastical adventures and find true love and find a wonderful place full of camaraderie and where he belonged. And, well, he wasn't entirely wrong, but he wasn't ready to see the true horrors of war and murder and all the worst parts of mortal life. A happy-go-lucky, free-love hippie became a sad boy, haunted by the murders he had failed to stop, and even committed himself, who eventually took levels in Paladin trying to become a hero, but full of self-doubt and unable to fully curb his chaotic nature. He doesn't know how to stop failing because he's terrible at planning, and sucks at following the plan even when he does. And sometimes, after he failed to save people yet again, he struggles with the thought that maybe things would just be better if everyone got to their afterlife anyhow. He lacks the strength to do anything that matters anyway, but he has an overwhelming empathy and care for the downtrodden and helpless, so he can't just roll over and do nothing. My barbarian has a tendency to leap into situations without thinking. If something needs doing, he's doing it unless the party stops him. He will not deliberately mess up the others' campaigns, but he will get bored and act whilst the others discuss. So, everyone discussing how to get around a town guard, he just walked up and said a cheery hello and walked through the gate. Let's say someone's fallen off the ship. Well, he's already overboard and trying to get to them. But maybe, just maybe, he should have waited for the PC that has water walk to give him some support before jumping overboard in a hurricane. Now, as a role-playing thing, this needs to be done clearly that the character is not malicious. If someone said that they want to try a plan, he will wait and listen. But if there is no plan, he's doing the first thing that comes to mind. Now, my druid's flaw is a bunch of regrets. He spends his time after the great victory moping about the people he didn't save, rather than celebrating. He is concerned at joining the wrong side. He has a sense of justice that doesn't stand for convenience. This has caused some fights, especially when he refused to back down from the correct side. And lastly, my artificer's flaw is that he is, well, for the moment, motivated by pecuniary interests only, so will demand payment to take part in missions that his fellow campaigners want to do for free. They are early on in this relationship, having only met 3 days ago, so perhaps this will change over time. But, for now, fame and fortune are all he cares about. Hey everyone, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, all because that keeps the lights on over here at MrRipper. We love you all, and we want to hear your stories. So down in the comments below, let us know. What is your character's greatest character flaw, the biggest flaw, and how does it impact your game? We love you all, and we're grateful that all of you, to this day in 2024, still continue to love Dungeons & Dragons. and may you still be nerds 10, 20 years down the line, regardless of who and what you are. We love you all. See you next time. Toodaloo.